My name is Harley Knowles, the president of Tennessee Wesleyan. We are thrilled to have you here this morning. Of course, the governor is here, and we're excited about that. We also have some other very special people to introduce. Vox Humana, which is one of our choral groups here at Tennessee Wesleyan, and it's directed by Professor Dr. Keith Wheeler. Dr. Wheeler.
Please rise for the singing of the national anthem.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stars have bright stars to the perilous fight, o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that the flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land, o'er the land, o'er the land of the free, and the home of the brave.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Some of our best and brightest. And that's just the tip of the iceberg, folks. For many of you folks who knew our Wesleyan students, they are really special people. Next, we will have the Pledge of Allegiance by State Representative Dr. John Fogarty. John?
Just be seated, if you would, for a moment. As we prepare to reaffirm our allegiance to this grand old flag, I'd like to ask a very special group of folks to stand momentarily. If you had the distinct privilege of wearing the uniform of this great nation, if you're a veteran, if you would please stand. If you're a veteran, please stand. Ladies and gentlemen, a veteran is a person that at some point in time in their life they stood before God and this flag, and they swore an oath to protect this country against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And in so doing, they wrote a check payable to the United States of America in the amount of up to and including their life if their country needed. That said, it's indeed a blessing to live in the state of Tennessee, and it is indeed a blessing to live in the United States of America. And these veterans and I would be honored if you join us in pledging allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have many special people here today, and we can't recognize everyone, but we do want to recognize a few key people. Of course, we have a few of our students here. If you're a student at Tennessee Wesleyan, would you go ahead and stand so we can recognize you? We have a few key students here. Any president worth his or her salt always recognizes the faculty. Any faculty in the room, If you would stand, we'd appreciate that. John, Dan, and of course, we have many public officials here. If you would stand and be recognized, folks who are public servants. Thank you so much. Of course, Senator Bell and Representative Fogarty are here, and we thank you for making the trip from Nashville to be here this morning. Also, Tennessee Wesleyan trustees. We have many here this morning. If you would stand and be recognized, please. The owners of Tennessee Wesleyan. It is an honor to be able to introduce the governor of the state, the Honorable Bill Haslam, and we're deeply appreciative that he made time in his very busy schedule to come to East Tennessee, and particularly here to Athens. Governor Haslam was born and raised in nearby Knoxville, as many of you know, where he became a successful business person and a public servant. In 2003, he successfully ran for mayor of Knoxville and was later re-elected to the seat in 2007. Governor Haslam isn't a stranger to Tennessee Wesleyan in this community. In the summer of 2010, he was here campaigning for the governor's seat, and he stopped into Tennessee Wesleyan that summer and spoke in this room to the Kiwanis Club. Many of you may remember that. We're also appreciative to the Governor Haslam for his support of this community in many, many other ways, and particularly the support of his cabinet members. Just recently, Commissioner Gonzalez was here, and many of you were here for that presentation when he talked to the banking community. And then more recently, just prior to Christmas, Deputy Commissioner of Transportation Paul Diggs was here as well to talk with the city and the college about a safety issue. And we're really appreciative of that. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the podium the CEO of the great state of Tennessee, Governor Bill Haslam.
It is really good to be back here. I'd like to thank you for hosting us. I was here, I think, actually a couple of times during the campaign. But more importantly, by the way, I was thrilled to see how many folks that are serving in office are here this morning. I really appreciate. I know your lives are already busy enough not to come to another breakfast, and I appreciate you being here. But as anybody who's ever run for office would tell you, campaigning it isn't always the most fun thing in the world. It's a lot of work. In my case, I campaigned for almost 2 years. But the byproduct of that is you meet a lot of great people who you would never have met, who literally become lifelong friends, and people who knocked on doors and had friends over to their house and do all the things that you have to do to successfully campaign. A lot of folks that are in this room helped Chrissy and I through that process, and we are very, very grateful and thankful for some long-term friends. Chrissy regrets that she couldn't be here. We had to have a dinner last night in Nashville, and she had an event this morning as well, so she couldn't come, but said to tell everyone hello. Several of you have asked. We did have and I'm sure you want to see pictures, which I'll show you later. We did have our first grandchild born right before Christmas, and I'm a little biased, but from everything I can tell, I'm pretty sure it's the smartest, best-looking, most athletic child ever born. Now, it's still early; he's 7 weeks, so it might not be, but he's doing great. Let me. What I'd love to do today is tell you a few things that I've observed over the last year of being governor, and what we're trying to do in this particularly in this upcoming legislative year. This is sort of an appropriate time for me to come and speak for a couple of reasons. First, I celebrated 1 year in office back last Sunday, so been in office for 1 year and 4 days. Second, the legislature came back into session last week, and I do appreciate Representative Fogarty, and probably, do you know anybody who can lead the pledge better than he can? I think that was incredible. Thank you. And Mike Bell, Senator Bell, came down here with me this morning, and he actually has to go back to do a little service this morning in Nashville, and then driving back here to be back in his district. But legislature came back, so this kind of kicks off a new year for us. And so what I thought I would do is talk about what some of our priorities are going to be for this year and what some of the things we're working on, and then have a chance to have some interaction and a little bit of question and answer as well. Let me just ask you a first question. What's the governor supposed to do? What's the governor's job? And this is meant to be interactive, so if you were describing, you're out, hiring somebody for the job, which you did last year. Thank you, by the way. I love the job. But what's the governor's job?
Balance the budget.
balance the budget is a great place to start, okay? It's a pretty good place to end, too, by the way, okay? Because number one, in Tennessee, we do balance the budget. We have to, and we have a history, a very conservative, thoughtful fiscal process. But unlike Washington, we have to balance it every year, and so we have to make some hard decisions. And the thing that sometimes gets missed in the process is budget really is policy, right? What you decide to fund or not to fund helps determine what you're doing. So a whole lot of attention is paid to the budget process. Here's what's not paid attention to in government. In the bank, Tom, I assume, at the end of every year you have shareholders that want to know, well, how'd you do? Right? You have earnings per share targets and expenses and budgets and revenue projections. At the end of the year, they want to know, how'd you do? The thing that amazes me about government, and those of you who are city council or county commission or anyone else that can verify me on this, nobody ever asks at the end of a government year, well, how'd you do? I was mayor for 7 years. I've been governor for 1 year, so it's been 8 budgets. We've wrapped up results. Nobody ever says that. But that's part of our job, right? Is we're given a budget approved by the legislature. Well, how'd you do against that? Well, I'm pleased to report that last year we beat that budget by $20 million in terms of services that we saved, while providing services, money we saved for the people of Tennessee. That's significant money that we can then put back to use other places. But it's balancing the budget and then actually making that budget is one of our primary jobs. What else? Be a leader. I mean, at the end of the day, the doctor introduced me as the CEO of Tennessee, and I'm not sure that's always true, but it is part of your role. I mean, there's a role of being a leader, whether it's out recruiting businesses or promoting tourism or doing a variety of things for Tennessee. In a way, you become, like it or not, the face of Tennessee. My children would say surely there's a better face we could pick, but well, what else? What else is the governor's job? Provide a vision. And I will actually do that. There's once a year when the governor has a chance to make the state address, which we're going to do a week from Monday, the 30th. At that point in time, I'll kind of lay out what my vision is for the state, and also we'll lay out the budget. And people sometimes think of budget as being this humdrum thing and vision as being lofty, but they ought to be tied, right? What you spend money on ought to be tied to where you think you're going. This is all great. What else? Economic development. The biggest issue in the state of Tennessee is still jobs. Okay, unemployment is, while it's going the right direction for us, it's going down. It's still over 9%, and we have pockets in the state where it's still very, very high. And so, if you ask me where I spend most of my time, it's on recruiting jobs and trying to build up the economic environment in Tennessee. Anything else?
Educated workforce.
Educated workforce, which is so tied to jobs, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that. But it's one place in Tennessee where we're making progress, but we have a long, long way to go. I know there's some educators in here, and I'm very grateful. I think I just met Allison, who's a graduating senior here, who's going to be an educator next year. We still in Tennessee have a long way to go, and we're going to talk about that. I was with folks yesterday from Volkswagen, who obviously established a large presence here, and they're now up to 2,500 employees down there. And I had this conversation with them 6 months ago saying, how do you feel about Tennessee as a place now that you're here and open and operating? And they said, honestly? And I said, yes. They said, well, we love the spirit of the place. I mean, we keep waiting for the fake niceness to wear off in Tennessee. And then we found out, no, that's what people really are like. They work hard and they have a great spirit, et cetera, et cetera. But we've been a little disappointed in the depth, particularly of technical and engineering talent, IT talent that we've been able to find in Tennessee. And so we really do have a task in front of us to help prepare more of those folks that can be the workforce for the Volkswagens and everybody else that we want to attract here. Anything else that you think is the governor's job? Anybody ever deal with the state in any way? You ever go apply for a driver's license? You ever adopt a family, adopt a child through children's services, or maybe get pulled over by a highway patrolman, maybe go to one of our public institutions of higher learning, or a public K through 12 school. One of the things that people kind of forget about, and particularly media who cover the governor, they think, well, it's all about what's your legislative agenda, or what are you doing on this? But The state of Tennessee is a 40,000 person organization, and we do everything from build roads and bridges. You talked about Paul Deggs being here last, to oversee financial institutions. We oversee education for 4-year-olds and for PhD students. We run prisons. We help families that have children with mental disability, or intellectual disabilities, and families who are trying to adopt children. We have a wide variety of things we do. And at the end of the day, I think you hire me to provide the very best service I can, or that we can as a state, in all those areas for the very lowest price, right? In the end of the day, that's what value is. It's a service for a price. And when you go to a restaurant or a dry cleaner or a grocery store or anywhere else, you decide where you're going to shop by that value you get, right? What's the product I get for the price I pay? I think government's the same way. It's just about this. There's things you can't buy for yourself, okay? You can't really go buy a higher education system. You can't buy and don't want to buy a prison system. You can't build your own highways and bridges. And so that's where government's role comes in. And so for the federal government, that's about one of their roles is providing national defense that none of us can buy for ourselves, but we think is important. It's about the other services that, it's about building interstate highways that cross boundaries that we can't do. For the state government, it's all those roles I said. For local governments, it's parks and sidewalks and garbage pickup and all those things. It's all that's what our job is. Individuals can't buy that themselves, so our job is to provide the very best service we can at the lowest price. And that's what sometimes gets lost in looking at my job and other jobs in government is, how do you do that? How do you make sure you provide the very best service? This year in our proposals, we announced our legislative agenda last week, and it's what we'll bring forward. A lot of what we propose is focused on just that. How do we give you the very best service? So whether you're getting your driver's license renewed, or you're sending a child to the University of Tennessee at Chattanooga or Knoxville or ETSU, or you have a child in a local school, whatever it is that you feel like you're getting from the state full value for the tax dollar you pay. In doing that, you always have to say, well, how are we doing? Where are the places we have weaknesses? Well, the first area that we addressed this year were all around issues of crime and safety. The first is a bill that's going to deal with prescription drug abuse. Tennessee, unfortunately, we're in whatever the worst is, the bottom or the top end of prescription drug abuse. In terms of just pure number of prescriptions per capita, the national average is 12, we're at 17. One disconcerting note, now emergency rooms see more drug overdoses from prescription drugs than they do from illegal narcotics. Okay, that if you think about if you don't understand how big the issue, we think of drug issues as being cocaine and heroin and other things. Drug issues are now much more likely to be prescription drug abuse. Second thing that we focused on is with safety is people with prior felony convictions who are involved in crimes using firearms. We support and protect the legal right to use firearms, but when you have a prior felony conviction you're not supposed to, we want to raise the sentence for that because too much of that is happening. We're also increasing the penalties for gang crimes. Anytime 3 or more people are involved, we think the odds of something bad happening go up, and so we're increasing the penalties there. And the other area we're addressing is actually domestic violence. Again, it's an area we're in the bottom or the top, whichever the worst end is, for domestic violence per capita. Prior to this in Tennessee, you could be a repeat domestic violence offender, have more, you could have 2 or more, and never serve jail time. We're requesting there be minimum jail time for repeat domestic violence offenders. There's a price tag to all that. Longer sentences mean more dollars, right? And so for the state, it'll cost us an additional $6 or $7 million for those longer sentences. But we're convinced for the long term, that's worth it. Second big area we're dealing with are all areas around job creation. Again, as we said, it's maybe the biggest issue facing us as a state. Tennessee does we attract jobs by first going out and working hard and knocking on a lot of doors. Occasionally it comes down to an incentive package that you can get that you attract a business with. Volkswagen wouldn't have come without an incentive package that we put together because we were competing with other states. Those incentive packages have really 2 components to it. One is a cash grant, which we call Fast Track. In Tennessee, those are limited to, you can only give those for infrastructure, build a new road, or training dollars. We are asking to be able to expand what we use that for, so that we could use it for relocation, site prep, and some other things in certain circumstances. Those certain circumstances would be where a new job or a new employer will have a significant impact on that community. What's that mean? Well, if we announced a 150 employee firm coming to McMinn County, I think that's good news, right? 150 employees coming to Davidson County, which is Nashville, isn't quite as significant. So the point is, we're trying to reach out and be strategic about where we incentivize folks to locate. The truth is, our rural areas are struggling a lot more than our urban areas when it comes to job creation, and we have to find a way to address that. Third piece is around schools, and this one has actually had some misunderstanding attached to it. In Tennessee, and I represent Fogarty's here, and he's been a lifetime educator. He can provide clarity on this. You have classroom maximum sizes. In other words, it depends on the grade. So in K through 3, I think the maximum class size is 25. The maximum average class size in a school is 20. Okay, so there's a maximum class size and a maximum average class size for the whole school. We're proposing to leave the maximum class size in place, but to remove the school average. And you go, well, what's that all about? It's simply this. It allows the local district, the local education authority, if they want to take that money and reallocate that so that they can pay some teachers more. No teachers would make less. Some teachers could be paid more if the district, again, feels like strategically that would make a difference. So let's say you teach a hard to teach subject. You're teaching physics, and we have a huge shortage of physics teachers in the state of Tennessee. The district might decide we want to pay that physics teacher more because of the subject he or she is taking, or it's a hard to teach in school. It's a low income school with not much parental involvement. We want to incentivize teachers to go there and stay there. Local districts, not the state, local districts would then have the authority to do that. Some folks are saying, gosh, well, I don't know about that. I mean, the 2 points I'd make. Number one, no teacher can go backwards in pay. It only gives people the right to go up. But one of the requests we made is this. In teaching, I think one of the issues right now is there's only two ways you can make more money. Stay an extra year and get more experience, or you get a master's degree. Okay? We're saying that local districts in these circumstances should have the authority to decide for themselves what they want to reward. So if there's a great algebra teacher, and they're worried about the algebra teacher going somewhere else or becoming a principal because that's the only way they can make more money, there's a way that district can incentivize that teacher to stay and teach algebra where we need them so in such a critical way. The third set of bills actually has to do with something that, and if you've never been around government, this will all sound a little bizarre, but it's all around the way that our employment system works in the state of Tennessee. Remember I said we have 40,000 employees? Okay. In the next 5 years, 40% of those employees are eligible to retire. Okay. 40% are going to have the years of service in where they can get their pension and retire. I don't know that all 40% will, but a large number will. So if you're in business, if you're in management planning, you're going to say, we need to be thinking about how we're going to hire replacements for all those folks. Only here's the problem in Tennessee. If you're in your business and you're looking to hire replacements, what do? You've got an open position, and you say, I'm serious about providing the very best value I can and the very best customer service. I've got an open position. What do? Anybody? You interview qualified people. That's a really radical concept because we can't do that in state government. We can't go out and recruit people to come to work for us. The way it works is there's a registry. And to get on that, you have to apply and get your name on there, and it can take either weeks to months to even get your name on the list. Okay. In the meantime, by the way, while your name's working the way up the list to where you might finally get a call 6 months, a year later, probably you've gotten another job in that time, right? If you need a job, you need a job. You put your name on the list. Well, there's a decent chance you found something else in the time it takes us to have you even make your way up there. But even once you're on the list, basically it's a set of experiences to determine it for how you're ranked. And So the supervisor can only pick somebody off the top 3 of that list. And the criteria of that list, like I said, is mainly experience. So let's just say you had worked for the state for 20 years in a position, or maybe outside the state for 15 years, versus somebody's brand new. They came out of Tennessee Wesleyan. They're one of the best students the school's ever produced. But by the way, they're not going to have any chance at all of even getting a serious look because of the way it's weighted. I compare it to this. We're like a football team that can't recruit. Okay, we can't recruit players. We can only take those players that come to us. And then when the game starts, we can only play the players who have been on the team the longest. We don't get to play the players who are the best. Now, how many people want to go support that team next Saturday? Nobody. I mean, how many people think that team would have been in the national championship? No way. I mean, no business works that way either. I'll tell you another interesting fact about how state employment works. We have something called bumping. Anybody ever heard of bumping? Here's how it works. Let's say I'm a administrative assistant for the Department of Transportation I'll pick Bradley County, okay? And let's see, we'll make this easy. John and Mike and I, since we all work for the state, we're 3 administrative assistants, okay? We all work Department of Transportation. Our boss comes in and says, with new technology, I'm going to try to put more money into service. I need more engineers and I need fewer administrative assistants. So I'm going to redeploy some assets to do that. And there's 3 of you. I really just need 2 of you now. And so, dang, I wonder what's going to happen here. Well, fortunately for me, I've worked there for 17 years. Mike has worked there for 16, and John has worked there for 15. John's gone. Okay, that's how. Nope, there's never a question about which one of us is better. Our supervisor doesn't get to say, whatever you do, don't lose John, and see if you can get rid of Bill. He's not so good. But John's gone because he's there as shorts. But John's a smart guy, and so he realizes that Department of Children's Services down in Hamilton County has an administrative assistant position, and that person has just been there for 14 years. And so John goes and bumps them out of their job. Okay, and that person is out of luck, except that they see that the Department of Human Services has an administrative assistant who's just been there for 12 years, and they bump them out of that job, and on and on and on. Notice never in there anywhere was one of the criteria who was the best skilled at that job and who had the best job performance. Now, nobody can tell me that that's the right way to run anything. Nobody else runs their business that way. And we put in place a system that has grown archaic and really does stop us from providing great service. Let me ask this. Why did anything that's in place, there was always a good reason for it, right? I mean, it didn't just happen. There was a good reason. Why is this system in place? What drove this to be?
Seniority-based to protect your experience.
Seniority-based to protect your experience, which isn't all bad, right? Experience is good. I mean, when I hired my commissioners, there were a lot more with gray hair than without, okay? But I didn't want, unfortunately, I wasn't bound by those same laws, and I could hire who I thought was best. Now, experience became a key part of that, but it wasn't the only criteria. Why else are those rules in place? Politics, right? The old days of political patronage, right? New governor wins, out with the old, bring in all my buddies, all the people who helped on my campaign, all my nieces who, nobody who had never had a job before. I'll fill up state government with those folks. That's what it's protecting, right? And that's a valid concern, right? We don't want everything to be driven by political patronage. But the cure for that fear has been way worse than the disease ever was. Okay, because of that, we have these employment rules that I talked about. I'm convinced that a better approach to that, where we don't take away all the rights of the employees, we'll still have an appeals process, a 3-step appeals process if an employee is laid off or demoted or disciplined. It's much more thorough than appeals process in most businesses would be. The problem is right now the state has a 6-step process, which takes sometimes as much as a year. In the middle of that year, while that appeal is going back and forth, it's called a grievance. We can't hire anybody for that position. So you go to the driver's license place to get your license renewed, and it's normally a little slow, but you notice it's really slow. And they go, "What's up?" So, Mike's position is vacant because he's grieving it, and we can't fill it until it gets solved. And so it just goes on and on. All those, like I said, are part of a system designed to stop political patronage. But here's the point I make to folks. There's actually two different kinds of employees in state government. There's employees who are totally at will. Okay, they work totally at the governor's pleasure. And if I decided, or their commissioner decided tomorrow they were gone, they were gone. They have no grievance rights or anything. That's about 10% of the state employee population. The other 90% are the civil service employees covered by civil service protection. Civil service employees have an average tenure in state government of about 12 and a half years. Okay? You would think, okay, logically it makes sense for those who don't have that protection, who are at will, to have a much different tenure. But do you know what the tenure is of those who are at will employees? 12 and a half years. Okay? My point is, we're addressing a problem that's no longer what it used to be. So when state government had 3,000 employees and had much more limited frame, somebody might come in and fill up half of the jobs in the state, but it's too large, too complex, and it's all too public now. There's way too much media covering you. The old days of somebody just coming in for political reasons and wiping everybody out are gone. And we've been left with a system that doesn't allow us to take care of our citizens the best way possible. Last thing in the deal. As I said, my job is to provide the very best service I can for the lowest price. What is the price in government? What's the price? Taxes, right? And so we don't think of there being a price in government, but there is, and they're called taxes. And local government is primarily property tax and things, and the federal government is primarily income tax. In Tennessee, it comes from 2 or 3 ways. Primarily sales tax driven, but some others, some franchise and excise taxes that business pay, and some things. I think our job is to keep those taxes as low as possible. So we're proposing to lower 2 important taxes this year. One is the grocery tax. Anybody know what the percentage of tax paid on groceries is in Tennessee?
7.
7 is what we pay sales tax generally, without the local option. Locals can charge another 2.25, 2.75. It's 5.5 on groceries. Okay, it's lower, and then sales tax for a reason, a good reason, and that's this. The argument can be made, and a lot of people say, well, Tennessee, because you don't have an income tax, your tax system is very regressive. In other words, regardless of what you make, you kind of pay about the same amount in sales tax. I would argue that's not quite true, that the wealthy people tend to spend a little bit more on sales tax. But on grocery tax, it really is true. Most of us spend about the same amount on groceries with some variance, regardless of income level. And so we have a real desire, I think, if we can lower taxes anywhere, it ought to be on that grocery tax because it touches as many Tennesseans as possible. So we're proposing to lower it from 5.5% to 5% over the next 3 years. This year, taking it from 5.5% to 5.3%. I think, again, that's something that will touch all Tennesseans. Second tax that we're proposing to lower is called the estate tax. Anybody know what the estate tax is? You get taxed when you die. Okay, which in itself, a lot of people think, well, that seems fundamentally unfair that you get taxed for dying. But within that, here's how it works. And the federal government has an exemption level of $5 million. If your estate is worth less than $5 million, you don't owe anything. Tennessee has an exemption level of $1 million. Okay, so the result is, let's just say you get to, you're on the plus side of 50, and you've got an estate worth, $4.5 million, and you start looking around thinking, is it smart for me to live in Tennessee? And a lot of people say, nope, it's not. I'm going to move to Florida because it's cheaper to die in Florida. And we kind of laugh when we say that, but it's true. And people do the math and they say, for my heirs it'll be good. And by the way, I don't really have to move to Florida. I just establish a residency there and I got to spend X number of days there. And a lot of people that we all think of as living in Tennessee actually are Florida residents in other places that don't have an estate tax. So what we've done is chase them away, and we've chased them and their capital away. And I can tell you a lot of folks who have moved to other places and they're at a point in life where they hey, I want to start another business or two here, and they've done that. We've literally chased them away. But that's a problem for one folk. Let's just say instead of your $4 million being in stock, your $4 million is in your family farm or your family tire shop. Now you can't really pick that up and move it to Florida, right? And so the people we're penalizing the most are the very businesses that we want to stay and encourage. We want more family businesses in Tennessee. Those are the ones that grow here. Those are the ones that give back to their communities, are involved in charitable organizations and local schools, those local family businesses. We want to do everything we can to encourage them, but we're not. We're chasing those folks away. So we're proposing that over the next, I'm saying while I'm governor, and I don't know if that's 3 more years or 7 more years. I hope it's 7. But while I'm governor, we're going to raise the exemption level from where it is in Tennessee now, $1 million to $5 million. People go, well, gosh, isn't that going to cost some money? This year, that will cost the state about $14 million. The grocery tax cutting the rate costs us about $18 million. But I know this long term, that estate tax, I'm convinced will bring more money into the state as people stay here and grow more opportunities as well. All right, I've talked a little longer than I meant to. I think we have about 5 or 6 minutes left for questions on any of that. I'd love to hear questions or comments about anything I said. And again, I apologize for talking a little longer than I meant to. Anybody? Questions? Yes, the question was, am I going to sign the redistricting bill after it's been corrected? Yes, I am, in short. The legislature, that's their responsibility, and they have done that, and it's an incredibly difficult process. And that's one of those that, however many friends you had before you started, you're going to have less when you finish. But I think they've worked diligently to get it fair and get it right, and I will sign it. After Tipton County gets corrected, you're on top of things. Somebody that knows the state government right there. Yes, sir. Yeah, we're continuing to have conversations on both, on them expanding the Volkswagen brand as well as Audi. I don't know anything new. I mean, they're serious about doing both of those. Tennessee's obviously in the mix, but other places in other countries are as well. Yeah. Well, I think it's part of the factor for them. I think they're looking at everything from wage differentials between building here and building in other countries. Another big issue is the U.S. unfortunately has we have some tariffs that we have to pay when cars are exported from here. Like one of their markets is South America, and there's actually a 35% tariff on vehicles that come from, if it's made in the U.S. and sold to Brazil, say, you pay about a 35% tariff. Sold to Europe, if we build it here and sell it in Europe, there's a 10% tariff, even though there's only like a 2.5% tariff on things that we import. So we have some issues around that in the country. So I think overall they've been very pleased. I want to be really clear there. They have been, like I said, they'd love to see more IT, engineering, strength, et cetera. If there's a negative that we can control, that's it. That's right.
Governor, has the sales tax issue with the Amazon distribution plants been resolved or is not? Have you seen
it? It has, and we have to have another piece of legislation passed to have it, but I think there's a general consensus of agreement. We were able to, before Amazon was building, Hamilton and Bradley, and about 2,000 jobs, and there's really no commitment to ever collect sales tax. And now there's a commitment to collect sales tax starting next year, and to add another 1,500 jobs on top of that in Middle Tennessee. So we feel like that actually ended up in a really good place. I mean, Tennessee's going to have 3,500 jobs and $1 billion plus investment, and starting next year we'll start collecting sales tax, which this is Bill's back of the math envelope is it's worth $20 million or so a year. It's a healthy number for us. Yes, Allison.
You kind of touched on some of the changes in education, and we've all read about the changes in education this year, such as teacher evaluations, tenure policies, improved expectations for students
Right.
across all curriculum areas. Given these changes, what advice would you give those of us who are in the future?
That's a great question, and I'll end there so I get us all out on time. That's a great place to end. My first advice would be to encourage people like you who are, strong, good students to please go be educators. My daughter, and Allison I talked before, is teaching her first year, and Chrissy and I encouraged her to do that because I just think it's a great way to have an impactful life. But I think the reality is in Tennessee, we've ranked too low for too long. Basically, the National Assessment Education Policy comes, they kind of do the nation's report card, if you will. And we've ranked, 43rd to 45th in reading and math, 4th grade and 8th grade for a long time. Unfortunately, we're not making a lot of progress, or we haven't until the last year or so we have. And and some people say, well, that's just it's a demographic issue. Tennessee's not the wealthiest of states. Tennessee, higher income students tend to perform better. It's that. Unfortunately, that's not true. If you just take low income children, as defined kids that are on free and reduced lunch, we're behind, significantly behind Kentucky, not Arkansas. And again, just imagine free and reduced kids versus others. Okay, so we have some real issues. The encouraging thing, I think I'd say this to teachers. We have a state, I think, now that hopefully is about changing the culture around education and placing a higher value on it. And so hopefully that'll mean treating you like a professional. And that's what we really, really have to do. And in doing that, we're going to treat you like a professional, hopefully find a way to pay you more over the long term. But we're also going to say it matters how you perform. When students learn more, we think you should be recognized as a better teacher, and we're going to use that data that we have to do that. And it's the final thing I'd say is it's all about doing what we have to do. We have to raise the expectations around education for every Tennessean. For students, first, their core curriculum's a lot harder. They have to have more math and science to graduate. For teachers, we're now using data to say, have students progressed while you've been teaching them? We're not saying, are all kids the same, but the child that you started with compared to where they ended, what kind of value added did they have? For principals, we're raising the requirements and expectations. For parents, the same thing. And finally for us, for Representative Fogarty and Senator Bell and Governor Haslam, we should be raising the expectations on us to say, if we are going to compete, if we do want the Volkswagens of the world to keep coming, we're providing the sort of place where we're training the workforce that they really, really do need. And I'll end with this. Maybe our biggest challenge is this. College is not for everybody. Believe me, I understand that it's not. I have people in my family, lots of folks I know. College is not for everybody. But it has to be for more Tennesseans than it's been for in the past. 21% of us, adults in Tennessee, have degrees. Nationally, that average is 30. The concerning factor is of the new jobs that are being created over the next 7 or 8 years, 55% of them are estimated to require a degree. Okay, well, if we're 21% of us have a degree and 55% of the new jobs created are going to need a degree, that's not a good formula. We don't fix that necessarily when you're a freshman in college. We fix it by, from the very beginning and building the education system. That's why all of us should be part of changing the culture of expectations around education in Tennessee. Thank you all very much for having me. I very, very much have enjoyed being here. Thanks.
On behalf of Tennessee Wesleyan and this community, we present you a book with the history of the college, the Tennessee Wesleyan College, and also some propaganda apparel. If you would wear that out on the golf course, it would be greatly appreciated. We would also ask that everyone stay seated until the governor has a chance to depart. And another round of applause for the governor and his